You live in good stuff, how big is your backyard? Put solar back there.
Well, it's all here, maybe.
Did you want less?
Oh, I consider.
It's never big enough, I wouldn't be staring.
Oh, yes, okay.
Once he gets authorized from the job, just let me know. Oh, no, yeah, no, yeah. I said, just,
You,
yeah, I was out with one.
We all wire?
Yeah, he is. Someone said, you get off that, so you talk, just not that job. Not that other extra time you're playing for it. Yeah, you can get that here.
Okay, at this time, I'll call the planning commission meeting of the Richmond Township Planning Commission to order. I'll ask the board to approve the minutes from the August 26th meeting. Hope these all had a chance to review them.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as they are written.
Okay, Sam moves to accept them as written. Do I have a second? Okay, Ben seconds. Any discussion or question? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. Okay, public participation of anything that's on the agenda this evening. If you're not on the agenda yourself. Okay, quiet bunch. Okay, old business, Fleetwood Borough Authority. Solar array, that sounds like a song.
You can sing it. So they are here to present tonight. I will say that the letter, there are a few comments there remaining in there, in the letter, you read it. I think a lot of them were to help clarify where they stand or what has been done. Some of them were asking for clarification. I've had a chance to speak to Joe about some of these comments, so I think there is some good discussion to have tonight, and some of the comments that we had from the last meeting, definitely want to go over in some detail so you're aware of where we stand. But I don't know if you want to kind of
Sure, yes, definitely.
update where you're at then, Joe.
Yeah. Okay, may I come up there?
Yeah, we won't bite.
You won't bite?
Nope.
Okay, so we, as Scott mentioned here, we did receive the plans for the comments, and we wanted to make a couple little minor changes, probably 4 or 5, just to sort of show you as we're discussing what's going on, and I'll hand these all out here. You can all look at them.
All right.
So, I guess we could just go down through Scott's comments one by one here, and that'll tell us what we want to discuss.
And I can kind of jump through the zoning. The first one, I will say, there was a question about coverage, and the way the ordinance has it is building impervious coverage. The building coverage, I can't remember exactly what the percentage was, but it was less than a 10%. They're allowed up to a 25% for building coverage, 35 for total impervious. Total coverage on the site, even with the panels, it's at 19.4.
Yeah.
So
With everything.
they are under their coverages. It was just a question to make sure we're clear at the last meeting that had been sent to clarify what they have. I was just asking for a little bit of a different presentation of the plan, just so it was easier to verify that. They did have their variance on the property for having them in the front yard. That's comment 2. Comment 3, simply, I think, and this, Chris, I haven't mentioned on there for the solicitor, I don't think it's any kind of a detriment to the plan or any necessity, I'll just clarify right now. I think the plan just reads incorrectly about 65 square feet and some type of an allowance for the glazing area. It says it for both less than and more than. I think we need to get to the bottom of what that means, but the way I read it, there's no change the outcome of this plan. And I don't know if I read, well, explained it
You know,
perfectly.
I'm not sure it's relevant to this project. I think it's, C is the applicable section for this project. B, which may apply to other projects, I think there's a typo in that section, and what I think it's probably intended to say is that you don't have to comply with the setbacks if your combined glazing area is 65 square feet or less. And I'm thinking, just visualize 65 square feet is like 6 by 10 or more than that. It's a fairly negligible amount of area, and therefore it might have been the intention of the ordinance that it not apply, not require setbacks in that situation. But in any event, I don't think it makes a difference for this project. I think clearly this project is greater than 65 square feet of combined glazing and has to comply with setbacks.
So that have been on there, just to, thank you for the clarification on that.
Well, that's my,
It was one of those,
that's my
I think
interpretation.
I think you're at there for what the mistake was. Zoning, number 4 was simply a zoning permit comment. And number 5, that spoke to, in accordance with the ordinance, that it requires that if it's abandoned, decommissioned in 60 days, it has to be removed from the property. Straight interpretation, that's how it complies with the ordinance. They have that noted on the plan. So I think they're meeting the intent of the ordinance on that. I didn't know if there was anything as far as decommissioning that you're aware of for anything other than a solar farm.
Well, if
I'm not
it's
the-
not expressly required by the ordinance, I don't think we can ask for it, but I think it would be great if you're willing to offer it. I don't know if your client is willing to offer that, because, I think it gives us some consistency with larger projects, but it's not required.
We can talk to the sewer authority and see if they'd be interested in doing something like that.
Why don't you ask?
Okay, we can do that.
I think the subdivision land development ordinance, there's a few waivers that are being requested. Some of them are standard waivers. I can do this after the meeting, but Kurt kind of said that Jen had remembered the discussion about these that we had last meeting, went to the board and asked if they'd be interested in having a review of certain aspects that we have waivers continually over and over for. Perfect example, the plan scale says 1 inch equals to 50. We're continually offering that as a waiver. I think as long as the plan scale is a way to better interpret the plans, it can be less than and still read those. It shouldn't always be a waiver. If it makes sense, we shouldn't have to grant waivers for that. We're in the process of getting some of those together. But, the first one is the proceeding with I had written a preliminary final plan. In the conversation I had today, Joe was asking if it'd be more appropriate to go for a final plan and ask for the waiver of the preliminary process.
Well, are there requirements under preliminary that are not also requirements under final plan?
Yes.
Okay, so I would not say just go to final. I'd say it's a waiver to allow you to combine preliminary and final. That's, I think, the better concept.
Would that be still section 500?
Yeah.
Which is the preliminary section?
Right.
Okay, all right, so we'll keep it as a preliminary/final.
So I would
And just-
recommend that if the planning commission is in favor of it, that they grant that waiver conditioned upon you including any preliminary plan requirements that are not also final plan requirements in your.
And I think we have done that. Yeah, we have done that. We just didn't know how to technically do it. So, yeah. Okay, so we'll keep it as preliminary/final. which the plans you have in front of you don't say that, but we'll put it right back to the next section. And we ask for a waiver of the section 500.
The second is the scale. They use the 1 inch equals 40, opposed to 50. Bottom of page 2 was location map and scale. 1 inch equals 800 is what's required. They're showing 1,000 for more detail. I don't have an issue with that. Top of page 3, there's a waiver request for, there was a statement required for the limestone, or if it's underlaid by karst geology. I don't know if you're still
Yeah.
worried about asking for that waiver.
No,
or if
we
that's-
removed that and we added the note number 32 to the plan.
So that waiver at the top of page 3 is no longer necessary.
And simply, the ordinance just says that we need to show a note that says the property is underlaid with carbonate geology. That's it. And it is.
So coming for the conservation district, if you can update on where that stands on the.
Yeah, we submitted to the Conservation District. We made a couple comments. We just submitted back to them. Conservation District, Berks County has taken the approach that every solar project, you need to have a pre-application meeting. So I've reached out to them to see if I can get a pre-application meeting for this and the two in Washington to sort of see where they're at and what they want as part of the pre-application meeting. I told Scott that I would, because he's sort of unknown too, what their sort of the intent of all this is. So I told him I'd let him know when it is, so he can tag along and go to the meeting and sort of get educated on what this process is too, since he reviews plans here, So,
Yeah, they issued a
no,
memo
Yeah.
that said there's pre-applications and that they should notify. It's a requirement, but they really didn't give much detail. And I'm just curious of what the municipality's role is in that.
Look forward to you reporting back to us.
It's kind of an open-ended one there, and I thought I'd
might as well jump in.
take the opportunity.
Yeah.
One of the things I've talked to some of those folks about is the phasing. I don't know if they've talked to you about it, but they're looking to have the ground disturbance phased to, there's not a lot of disturbance all at one time. And I don't know if that's going to
Maybe
be
that's
part of
something-
the conversation.
Maybe that has something to do with getting the vegetation to grow on the property, because if it is a cropped field, now it's all dirt, right? So you're disturbing the whole thing, right? So we actually have talked to our clients about if you have a situation like that, get the thing planted, do a disc planting of 2 different directions to get a full vegetation growth over 2 periods, and then start. Because then that means you have a full grass vegetation out there and you're moving around on grass versus dirt.
Yeah.
And that's what we, David's, well, that's what we've been doing, so.
It's a good strategy.
Maybe that's what they're thinking about, I don't know.
Yeah, I think one of our other projects had a very different twist to how people approach the solar farm, so. And that coming from their attorney, he said that was probably one of the largest disturbed projects they've ever seen. Take it for what it is, but that's one of the things they're saying, and I think the conservation district, and the county, and everybody have kind of.
We want a different outcome next time.
Yeah.
And this is definitely very different than that project that we
Scale
have
is
seen
a lot
once. And the scope too, the way that they're approaching it, simply because it is already a level area where they don't have to go out there and grade.
Right.
So,
So this would not be regraded
Zero.
necessarily.
Yeah, 0. All they do is go out and they'll pound the post in. Anything that's gonna be graded is the concrete pad, to pull the topsoil out, put a concrete pad for transformer, and then digging the underground electric trench, which is, this wide. Everything else is pound the post in, and put metal brackets right on the post and mount the panels on the post.
and the only thing I'd say to it is that the conservation district, DEP, it's literally the recommendations to these plans. That's how they want to see this happen. Leave the vegetation in there, not disturb it. They have to get an ES plan if they are directed to do anything more, assuming, hey, there's going to be a laydown area or something along those lines. They'll have to consider that, but the amount of disturbance, I don't think it's going to kick it into a larger permit of any sort, but they might have to do something along those lines. But the idea is, don't go out and regrade the property and create an issue.
Especially with stream being here too. But the good thing about this site is too, you have the existing treatment plant. existing paved areas that we can use for laydown. You know, so their plan is to go back there with all the equipment laid in the blacktop areas, and then when they need it, they'll go back and bring it out the driveway and come down. So that's also a plus with this. But yeah.
That's the majority of the comments on that page. There is a comment, number 6 on page 3 about this solar easement, possibly reserving for solar easements. And if you want to explain it.
Yeah, so if we had a job where they were leasing from a farmer to put this in, you would have more of a need of an easement because the solar is being owned by a separate entity than the property owner here. So on this one, the municipal sewer authority is going to be owning the facility on their own property. So it's almost like an accessory use for a residence putting it, you know, so there would be no need for having an access easement on your own property for the benefit of your use. So that's why I thought we really didn't need that. So.
They agreed to a Knox box top of page 4. I know that was a request previously for emergency services, so they had that. Okay, so stormwater, this is one of the big ones here I wanted to talk about. They are meeting DEP's requirements for solar panels, solar farms, just in general, if you're having, if you're installing these. And you can speak a little more to the specifics, but for the ordinance itself, there's a section in the ordinance that says if you are within the limits of a water of the Commonwealth or within or adjacent to, in this case, you're in a floodplain for that. That is the jurisdiction I interpret for the ordinance. And I lean heavily on what DEP's interpretations are here for what they would recommend. Since they aren't disturbing the grounds and they're following these recommendations completely, they say you don't need any stormwater. I think our ordinance leans towards that with that section that they have in there. When you're talking about a water of the Commonwealth, the other part of this is if they were to construct something, 2 things. One, you're in a floodplain, the infiltration is just not there. You're going to be looking for exceptions in your stormwater ordinance for that reason. And if you build something, you're now creating another obstruction in the floodplain. If you picture a storm pond, that you have more that they are installing and creating an issue with. I think because of that section in the ordinance, and this is kind of the explanation, not just reading the comment, but if they have that approval from DEP, they are meeting all those requirements. I think they are meeting our ordinance in the different regulations they have there. It's a little different because they're not building the stormwater basin, but they're meeting all the other requirements that DEP has out there for the solar panels. So I think this is a little unique. They aren't disturbing the property like they were at the previous project that we were looking at. But that's how I interpret this on the design that they have and reviewing it and kind of looking into it. I think they are meeting everything for DEP, and I think that's the approach on this.
If you look at that last page in the plan set, there's a little detail in here that sort of explains to DEP what DEP wants you to do. Bottom middle. This is a detail right out of the DEP FAQs. Is if you have your panels, and this would be your panel, and if your width of your panel is 10 feet, ours is like, I don't know, 13.8, whatever, but if it's 10 feet, okay, for simplicity, if that's 10 feet, then your aisle needs to be 10 feet, and your next panel is 10 feet. So the water coming off that first drip edge needs 20 feet of land to absorb that water off of that drip edge. That's what they're saying. But you need to have a slope of less than 10%, preferably, to do that. And that slope out there is flatter than a pancake, you know, so it's very flat. So we have our array set up and spaced according to that detail. So that's where we meet the disconnect in the DEP requirements for the stormwater.
So I don't know if there's any question on this, and I wanted to focus on this, discuss it a little bit, just because it is such a different approach than the first project we had, but it still is meeting ultimately the requirements of the ordinance, just in a very different way on this project than it was in the first project. I don't know if anybody else has any questions on that one. I didn't want to just skip over it.
It's not too bad, right?
What's that?
No questions are popping up, so.
I guess in reality, the water still won't soak in regardless if you have it level or if you don't. It won't soak in here. You're not having,
Depends how fast it comes.
well, it doesn't soak in there. That water, that soil doesn't even take it.
Yeah.
One of the other the two things you had said that are slightly different than we've seen before too is these are going to be, the posts are going to be completely stationary. There isn't rotating, trying to hit the different times of the day.
Right.
From what you were saying. And the other part is every panel is actually, if you're thinking from the top down, there's a break in the middle. So technically it's kind of 2 panels for every panel.
Yes.
So there is a break in the middle and there's actually,
So the water
Two
gets
different
around
treatment.
two different places.
It's like right here. So there's a break right there. This water will actually come off there, and this water will actually come off there.
as I saw it, that's not anything to do with the DEP regulations.
It's
It's
just the way
just kind of a little bit of a, in my opinion, a good break for the township to have on, or just in general, to have those 2 edges instead of concentrating.
Helps spread out the water.
So if there's no other questions on that right now, if you think of one, chime in. Moving into the floodplain ordinance, they did have a pretty detailed hydraulic report completed. They are in the floodplain. They needed to really look at the 100-year floodplain and how these affect that. So they ran the scenario of every post, how that is in the floodplain setup. And just to clarify, originally the floodplain was based off of what they saw on the map. Once they did the study, they realized that actually covered really the whole footprint of all the solar panels.
Pretty much, that's correct. So on sheet 2, the blue area. So there's a blue line that comes through the site, the blue dashed line. That's the 100-year floodplain that's determined from that study.
So it says here,
And there's blue elevations here. If you look at these, it says FE, that's the flood elevation. So it's 380.2. So if you look at the existing grade, it's 379.36. So there's going to be about, what, foot of water there when it floods. See those elevations right there? That's the flood elevation right there. So this is your 100-year flood line. These are 100-year elevations. And if you compare it to the existing spots, it's about a foot throughout the site of water.
and all the panels are required to be 1.5 feet above the 100-year.
Yeah, ours
Flood
are 3
elevation.
foot above the ground to the drip edge right now. So that means there'd be about 2 foot separation there.
Which is, and I specifically don't have that spelled out, but they're meeting that part of the ordinance of having everything elevated.
And all your electronics are watertight.
Yeah, that's correct.
That was a comment I had in here. We did meet at our office and Jeff Fine was able to look at that, review it against previous permits issued. It's pretty consistent that as long as it's a waterproofed conduit, they have those materials at zoning permit phase to confirm that they will be, everything is elevated. I mean, it doesn't, that is just a conduit with a line getting to each one of the panels, but
The only thing that would be coming out of the ground, so all your underground services are underground. Okay, so this green line represents the one trench that'll service all of that array. So anytime this green line pops underneath this section of array, there'll be a conduit coming up. It'll come up and it'll go into the metal brackets and the framing, and then that actually will feed that one conduit up will feed that whole row. So there'd be a pop up here, and be a pop up there, pop up there. So the conduit will pop up, and it'll be above the 100-year flood because it's going to go the whole way up to the panel. So that'll all be sealed the whole way up to it. And then, it'll, like I said, there's a tray that actually runs the whole length of that array, and the electric will be put in that tray.
Going back to the study, they had clarified and they determined that in that 100-year flood, they will only be raising, I had put it in there as an inch, it was 0.1, technically it's 1.2 inches. But that's how much of an elevation difference these posts will cause during that flooding. That's still within the tolerance allowable in that situation, that it's not raising it. They're looking for it to stay less than a foot, but they're not even close. And the elevation changes at the culvert itself were not affected by these posts specifically. So they did that study, they verified compliance with the ordinance. That's ultimately what they had to do with this. Again, that is part of, they did that in accordance with DEP and PennDOT study regulations. Is this reviewed at all by, there's no reason for that to be reviewed by anybody else?
No.
I didn't want to say it would. Other comments in there, we already talked about the waterproofing. I had asked for information about the transformer.
The noise.
Yeah, by definition, they have to have it raised 3 feet above, or 3.5 feet above. So technically, the transformer right off the drive aisle, it's sitting right here. That'll be sitting a little higher than what you would normally think it'd be sitting. Just ask for comments on that. From our discussion, he doesn't think that itself is going to be an issue. I think there's been comments at the existing solar farm, but it's mostly related to the substation more than the transformers. But I think when they first put those in, they may have made noises people were hearing, but I don't know.
We're going to have our noise guy write a letter to say haven't applied, there's nothing there.
Landscaping, I made a comment there, but they did, he added a little bit of a changed buffer if you look on the last page.
So there was,
Second or last page, I'm sorry.
okay, page 2. There was just a single row of plantings here. It was discussed
This
maybe
was
we should have 2 rows to give it a better solid buffer at the time of construction.
Okay,
I can go.
So we have decided to go ahead and do 2 rows here. There was also a discussion at the last planning commission about you guys wanted something maybe up here against the baseball fields.
yes.
So on the left side of the driveway going in, there's utility service poles there. To put trees there, I think might be a little bit of a problem. So what we decided to do, right, we're gonna take that existing chain link fence and put slats in it. You know, the slats you weave through to make it more of a solid appeal. And then that fence doesn't start till about, I don't know, 150, 200 feet back. So from that front post of the fence forward to that utility pole, we're gonna put a solid fence there. So on this side, there's gonna be a solid fence from the utility pole back to the corner of the existing chain link. And then we're gonna put those slats in the chain link back to the property corner of the baseball field.
So it's not going to be very easily accessible.
What's that?
Well, that was one of my concerns at the softball field. They run in there all the time, so.
You mean the balls run in there all the
Yeah,
time?
well, then kids go after them, so.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, the chain link you would think would stop them now, right?
Well, yeah, I hope so.
So the slats is just gonna provide that visual that you guys asked for
Right.
to be see-through. And then the solid fence, you think would still stop the balls from, and then also eliminates that buffer.
And some might go, but the kids won't run in very easily.
That's right, that's right. So, is that
Sorry about
okay?
that.
You guys okay with that? So that was a change that we just made today. The plan.
The comment number 2 just spoke to Typically, there's some kind of an access to get in for maintenance on these solar arrays. And they basically said they want to limit the amount of impervious or any need for that maintenance, and maintenance to the property or to the panels is so limited that I don't think it's necessary either. But
Yeah, so what'll
it's
happen?
not a requirement either.
So what'll happen is when they wanna mow that, they're either gonna use their mower that they've been using for the whole facility, or if they hire somebody, he's gonna come in there with a truck and trailer and park back there and just come back, open the gate up and go in and mow, so. Yeah, like I said, that's a big benefit of having this existing facility here, as far as that, keeping the impervious down.
The last comment had to do with deliveries or construction, and we didn't talk about this one, but it was just speaking to any project where you have the larger deliveries coming in, the equipment coming in, short of looking at the road for bonding, just a security, if you'd be willing to put that for a post-construction evaluation on crisscross road. I think to just have something there to secure a repair. I mean, I think if anything, if you had the driveway where the trucks are turning and coming in and out, maybe on the shoulder right along the frontage, but that's.
You're okay with something like that?
Yeah, we'll take before and after photos. Is that fine? And if we want to post a letter of credit.
Yeah, I think you had created the cost estimate already, and we're reviewing that, but if
I don't think it included
we
it.
have something in there, no.
I did.
And I didn't have comments specifically to that yet, but I didn't think it was
So we're gonna add another row of trees,
too
and
necessary.
fences, so that'll change, but.
Yeah, I think we're okay with that.
I think that would cover a concern along the roadway there without getting in too deep with a bond or anything.
So how often must you come in now and check these panels? Anytime come in and drive up and down each row, or?
Yeah, so once it's built, we will have a remote monitoring system. So honestly, most of the monitoring occurs on our laptops.
Down
So
to the
we're-
center, okay.
We're constantly monitoring the system remotely. If there's a panel or an inverter that blows a fuse or a breaker flips, then obviously we'll have to send someone out, but that's very limited.
Right.
That typically we like to make sure everything's running at full capacity in the springtime before the sun comes. Really.
I'm watching the other one. It's a little bit bigger than this one, but anyway, they're in there running up and down almost every day, and I don't know what's going on.
No. The only time we'll be in the array, most of the time what you're gonna see in the array is a guy zooming back and forth with a lawnmower mowing the rows.
Yeah, okay.
And that's gonna happen. We don't even like to mow as often as, we'll meet whatever ordinances you guys have for lawn care.
In other words, the weeds won't be higher than the panels, okay.
Correct, exactly.
Actually, DEP does prefer that to be probably at 10 inches or so because of the thicker, higher grass. It helps the absorption of the water.
Alrighty,
So ironically, we're going through that right now. If we can have a quick conversation about the maintenance, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So I have a little experience on this right now, just because of the last project. And the ordinance for the township with a property just as this will read that anything 150 feet from the roadway is supposed to be maintained along a residential property, I'm sorry. So along the frontage of the property, that has to be mowed and maintained just like a regular property. The residential property meets that 6-inch, then you start getting into the possibility of a violation. So I'm assuming that they might mow a certain part of the property regularly like that. They would probably need to do that on the outside of the fence.
That's what I'm thinking. You know, on the road and all that, they have the 6 inches, right? But then underneath the panel, they probably like to keep it up by 10 inches, probably to help that DEP saturation of water.
What we found is that the recommendations for the first year ask for one mowing of the season. And it's just crazy to do that. We're gonna run into issues with the site turning into
Noxious weed seeds.
weeds, seeds, yeah.
I'm
So
sure
we
the
had that issue where,
authority will take some of that responsibility, probably. They mow there anyway.
They'll be mowing it, yeah.
I'm thinking if we could try to maybe have the conservation district approve mowing inside in the area there. I think it came down to like at least 4 times a year.
To once a month or something there.
Because
We
then
don't want some-
once a month seems reasonable, because I think that during that time when it was on and off rain, but a good rain,
Yeah.
it was getting to 3 feet almost in a month.
Yeah,
We don't want that either, because anything above 3, if it gets to 3 feet, then it's affecting our production.
I think that the ordinance really spelled out what happens along the frontage on abutting a residential area. But once you got inside the solar array, then it kind of fell jurisdiction to the DEP requirements is what we're seeing.
Yeah.
If we try to override that, you're really.
defeat the purpose.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the conservation district was open to saying, yes, we like that 1 to 2 foot, no more than 2 foot, maybe around 1 foot, but they've said they're comfortable with something a little lower.
Yeah.
If we could
Yeah, I think
maybe
with
come up with a
that-
maintenance schedule that
Yeah.
the DEP is also okay with, then I think it would be great to
Yeah, I'd
have something on
like,
the plan.
I'd like that to be documented, because I don't want there to be any misunderstanding or, failed expectations. So
Yeah.
if we can document what the maintenance plan is and everybody knows what it is and agrees to it, then we'll be in a much better position going forward.
What is the status of the other job? Is it actually done?
No, it's all the equipment's in, the site has generally been completed for construction.
Okay.
We're punch list phase, so they have a couple different conversions they have to do for the ponds, almost reconversions, and fixing some areas that have gone. I just took down silt socks. There's a handful of things that the townships have kind of piled over the few months that need to be addressed.
Okay, so
It's
we
getting
need,
closer.
we need 2 waivers? Or should we just go with the preliminary?
I think
You
there's
have 3.
Yeah, I think there's 3.
Yeah, all page 2.
Page 1.
I'll look at one.
Yeah, preliminary plan submission.
Oh, you're on
Yeah.
page 1, I'm sorry. I was going
Yeah,
off
that's
the
it,
left.
sorry, I'm sorry.
Okay, you're saying you're on page 2.
He's
I'm
saying,
just saying the list is here.
he's got them listed right on the.
Oh, okay.
It's actually.
Preliminary plan submission, and that's the preliminary to final you're talking about? First one?
Correct.
Okay, and then plan scale, we talked about quite a bit last time, but that's 1 inch equals 50 foot, is that what you're talking about?
It's a waiver of that to go for 1 inch equals 40.
Yeah, okay, yeah. And third one is location of map scale,
It's allowing it to be slightly larger than what was
okay.
in the ordinance.
Everybody understand what we're looking at? We're looking for motions for 3 waivers, section 500, preliminary plan submission going from, preliminary to final. Do I have a motion on that?
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Waiver number 2, plan scale. Any questions? Not, let's have a motion.
I'll make the motion to waiver section 506.1.
Okay, Nick makes a motion. Do I have a second? Ben seconds. Is there any discussion or question? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. And now we're down to the scale, going down to 40 foot instead of 50, is what you're saying, correct?
50 to 40.
50, yeah. Oh, I said it backwards.
Minor.
That's what we've done.
Minor.
things.
That's the one we just did.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's the,
The 1,000.
it's the last one, location map scale.
Okay,
That
yeah.
one's just going from 800 to 1,000. Same idea.
Okay. We're all on the same page. 800 to 1,000, what's the wish of the board?
I'll make a motion to accept that.
Okay, Sam moves to have a second.
I'll second.
Second by Nick. Is there any discussion or question? Wasn't that Nick? That was you. Okay, sorry, Matt had it. Sometimes I can't figure out whose voice is coming over here. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. They're sort of smiling.
Thank you.
Anything else on this that we should be discussing?
I know there's a couple items there as far as closing out the Berks County review, but having the discussion before the meeting, I do know that they're looking for the planning commission to make a recommendation. I would say conditional upon the letter. Recommendation for a preliminary / final plan approval.
So you can handle
Unless
that.
you didn't want, yeah.
No, thank you.
That could all be taken care of, right?
Yeah, I believe, again, I think the letter was long-winded compared to where we're at and what they have addressed, especially with the comments he's addressed.
Okay.
I would be comfortable with.
We don't need a motion on that.
Yeah, we do need a motion to recommend conditional plan approval to the
Okay.
supervisors.
We need a motion to have conditional plan approval.
And the condition is compliance with the outstanding items.
Do I have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that.
Okay, Matt has moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Ben second. Is there any discussion or question? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried.
Thank you again. Appreciate it. Thanks, Scott. You, want me to take those plans out of your way there, or you wanna keep them, or?
That was
Are
yours.
those the same that we have?
Okay, do you have enough plans?
And again, these, like, I gotta change the title, and
Oh, these have,
it has the trees, it has the changes, but doesn't have the
yeah,
right title.
let's just keep one on there and
So no one?
put a note on
No, it's fine.
it. Yeah, let's just have one soon for
Yeah, the same ones from the actual plans that we brought in.
They made a couple changes to
The only
these.
thing was the waiver and, the buffer showing 2 rows, and I changed the title, which we're changing back.
Okay,
That's the only changes.
And the humming will be.
and then I will have.
I would just-
You'll keep one for the file.
Yeah, I want to keep one for the file, just
That's
so we have
what I was
it.
grabbing.
Oh, okay.
I'll grab it and put a note on it.
That's fine.
And actually, one, two,
I'm all right.
you good?
We're gonna hook them up.
We're all in the same favor.
We're on the same page.
We don't have anything. No.
Yeah, the next.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay, thank you.
Have a good night.
Okay, we're going to new business. Any new business? Any miscellaneous business? Any public participation on anything else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, 604.
State your name, please.
Oh, sorry, Rebecca Stern. I was here at the last meeting and I went to the supervisor's meeting also. To talk about 604 Crisscross Road. Everything that I've been reading shows that the property is an industrial property, even though it's zoned as a commercial property. I know there's wording of, I can't remember is it non-conforming? I'm looking for some clarification, because if you lived behind this and saw what was going out the door today, you would be scratching your heads. I have video and pictures. Two oversized tractor trailers leaving made with docks that were made. When the tractor trailer actually backed up, and they loaded way farther back in the property than they normally do. They normally load up closer to Crisscross Road. They were back in where they're talking about doing the gravel lot. The pots and pans in my island were vibrating while the tractor trailer was idling. So that had me looking up the differences between commercial properties and industrial properties. And your wording is in the zoning ordinances, retail or service establishment. When I looked up, the Department of Labor actually references that and says that it does not take part in the manufacturing process. So I just really want black and white. How is this commercial? I've been saying this for probably 4 years now, probably more. I just don't understand how it's allowed as it is
Well,
there.
Chris is gonna answer.
Yes,
you were, hi,
hello.
you were at the zoning hearing back in
2020, yes,
And the zoning hearing board reviewed this along with the variance requests that were made at that time. And as you may recall, the variances were denied in part based on the testimony from you and your neighbors
Yes.
about your concerns.
Yes.
So the zoning hearing board rejected their request to expand
yes,
to be an even larger operation.
yes,
But at that hearing, the zoning hearing board reviewed how the use of the property would be classified. And I'm going to read to you from those conclusions of law that are part of that written zoning hearing
okay.
board
And I
decision.
did try to find those meetings, but the website doesn't go back past 2022.
Okay, well, there is a written decision, and we can get you a copy of the zoning hearing board decision. So conclusions of law number 1, the property is located in the R1 low-density residential district. Commercial fabrication shops such as the applicants are not a use permitted by right in the low-density residential district. 2, after the submission of an application under the name of the property owner to the township, a zoning permit was issued by the zoning code official of Richmond Township on October 29, 2019, finding that the use of light manufacturing in the existing building on the property was permitted as a pre-existing non-conforming use. The ZHB deems a commercial fabrication shop to be light manufacturing. The permit, however, limits outdoor storage to finished product only. The permit likewise limits the outside storage of finished product to the impervious area existing at the time of issuance of the permit. 3, pursuant to the zoning permit, the applicant instituted its non-conforming use in the building described as a commercial fabrication shop for outdoor recreational and marina products in February of 2020. 4, the zoning hearing board, consistent with the zoning permit, concludes that the applicant's commercial fabrication shop for outdoor recreational and marina products use in the existing building on the property is permitted as a pre-existing non-conforming use. So what I'm taking from this is that the zoning hearing board received testimony about the intended use of the property and made a determination of the classification of the use and decided that this was a commercial fabrication shop for outdoor recreational and marina products. And
Back
so,
in 2019,
no, this was the,
that was at the
this
zoning.
is, yeah, this is part of the zoning hearing board decision dated, well, the hearing was October 29, 2020. The decision was issued December 8, 2020. So, in my opinion, this issue was reviewed and decided by the zoning hearing board. They reviewed what the zoning officer had done and agreed with what the zoning officer had done and agreed to a classification of the use as a commercial fabrication shop. Now, clearly, that's not a permitted use in that zoning district, and it wouldn't be allowed to start from scratch. But because there was a pre-existing use there that the zoning officer determined was similar,
I don't remember the zoning officer talking at that meeting at all. I
I
don't
think there
remember
was a
anything
decision
with,
prior to the zoning hearing board where there was a permit issued for the property based on, it preceded the zoning hearing board.
So,
There's only
so
hearing that
there
we
must
were
have
talking
been a
about here.
permit. I mean, this evidence came into the record somehow. And maybe it was the zoning permit and the conditions attached to the zoning permit, or maybe what the zoning hearing board reviewed. I mean, I wasn't at the hearing, so I'm just
And that
understanding what was
predated
here.
my involvement at all. I'm sorry, Chris, I'm not
Go
trying
ahead.
to jump in, but it was, from what I recall, there was a zoning permit issued based on, was it a change of ownership of the property?
Yeah,
And I
that's
think
right.
that's when there was that permit and that decision issued at that time.
So that could have flipped from commercial to non-conforming commercial, or however the wording is, just through a permit without having a zoning hearing
Well,
for that.
I don't know what it was involved in. I don't.
yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not 100% clear either, but before they started the new use, they applied for a zoning permit, and the permit was issued, proving what they were proposing to do. And they had to go, and so they didn't need a zoning hearing because the zoning officer determined that it was a continuation of a non-conforming use for that property. It wasn't exactly the same, but it was similar enough that that the new owners were entitled to the benefit of the pre-existing non-conforming use of that property. But then when the zoning hearing occurred, which was about the expansion that they were requesting, from what I'm reading, the zoning hearing board reviewed what the zoning officer had done, and they agreed with that. And
I don't think that happened at all, honestly. I remember us standing up there talking with our masks on, and I being asked if I could be, their attorney asked if she could cross-examine me, and I thought you were there. It was another gentleman then, sorry, who's like, no, that's kind of a hearing. But I don't remember anything talking about a zoning officer. I'd like to know who the zoning officer was.
Well,
Not that that matters,
it did,
but
he didn't necessarily have to be physically present. If they
Okay.
were reviewing a permit that he had issued,
okay.
but just as evidence of what had occurred. I mean,
Okay.
I'm guessing that the applicant, the business would have probably brought into that hearing information about how they had applied for a permit and what the results of that were. Again, I wasn't there, and I don't have a copy of the transcript to review. But I'm just telling you what I see in that written decision. So,
Is there any way to overturn it?
well, that's what I was gonna say was, you were at the
This is
hearing.
definitely not, this is industrial. I mean, I will show, happy, I don't want to be on camera, but I guess I am anyway, but, it's just, it's
Well-
industrial, it's manufacturing, it's not just machine shop fixing a vehicle or anything like the old owner had done.
Well, there is a description in here.
And they do store stuff outside that is not complete, which you mentioned in your.
Well, then that is something you could complain about. I mean, what
I've
I
been
would
complaining
suggest
about
to
it for
you
3 years.
is, you should request a copy of the written zoning hearing board decision. And we have a right to know process, and if you request a copy of the written decision, you can get it from Jen. And
Sorry,
then
Jen.
you can review that, and if you do not believe that they are complying with the conditions of that decision, you can make a complaint about that. But that would be, I think, something that could be beneficial to you, because they definitely have to comply with the conditions of that zoning hearing board decision. As far as getting the use rejected, I think that that's probably not gonna happen, because from what I can see in the decision, there was an explanation of what they were gonna do on the property. And unless they're not doing what they said they were gonna do, they're entitled to continue with that operation. But again, were conditions, and if they're not complying with the conditions, that's something that you can raise an objection to.
Okay. Which furthers my concern with the expansion that they're talking about, making that a parking lot down below, because there's, all that's there now is some random vehicles, a dump truck and whatnot, but when they backed up these huge tractor trailers and dropped them to get loaded, and they put these huge docks on top, like I said before, it used to happen up top, or they weren't this big before, I don't know. But I mean, it's like right on the property line. I did a video from my upstairs window, and it's very close to the property line, which is what, I don't know. I'm obviously upset.
Well, the current plan is based on this decision, I believe. I mean, to the extent that they were when they made this application, they were requesting essentially to double the size.
Yes.
And the zoning hearing board said, no, you can't do that. But they did have the right to do a partial expansion, and that's what the plan is for, is to do what they're allowed to do.
Up to 50% of the existing building.
So they could do 50%, but not 100%, which is what they had originally asked for.
And I think there was two, it was for the building and then the paved area. And the paved area was maybe 150% or something around that, what they asked for.
So they didn't get
But if you look at everything that I've sent in over the years, I've complained about, they've expanded, they didn't have approval. They've done this, they didn't have approval. There's consistently things that they still don't have the right approval for the storage containers that are there. They didn't have approval for adding, like, I don't know, 100 dump trucks of dirt and stone and raising up the whole side of the, they mounted, what are those things called? The concrete pillars, okay. They created a whole another driving area that wasn't there before, because before it was sloped. They created it so they're able to drive all through there. I've been complaining about it since 2020. And by complaining about it, I mean attending meetings, submitting complaint forms and whatnot.
Okay.
Yeah, and so those do get turned into the codes department. They look into those, and I do know there's been.
And I've never, ever once heard back from those complaints in writing or anything.
I don't know what the process is, or
Yeah,
if you've seen
no,
anything
just-
back on those, but
Right.
some of those can be addressed with the property owner, but I don't even know what the proper process is, that when you complain, if there's supposed to be a formal response to your complaint.
Well, and it doesn't change, so then I know nothing was done to do it. I know the guy from Kraft was back and forth with me and did, the groundwater or something, because they created another waterway, essentially, with building up the ground that they did. But there was never any resolution. It just kind of.
Okay, apparently it's over our heads, because we know what's going on right now.
Yeah,
But I mean,
And I don't have it, I personally don't have the history on where
yeah, that's the next
complaints have
problem.
gone or what the responses were. I
I mean,
wasn't prepared to respond to those, but
has Jeff been handling all this, or?
to the best of my knowledge, yes. That's the point.
Every time a
Person.
complaint has been sent into the office, it has gone out.
yes,
to
Jen
Brad,
has been amazing.
And thank you, next.
But it's true.
Those have
She's
gone out
heard
to
me
Jeff.
on the phone when I called, and the beeping is incessant.
And Jeff says he would reach out. So, and unfortunately, I don't hear anything back. I don't know if they get in touch with her after that, but basically it was just, I submitted the actual complaint forms to Kraft. Jeff reviews it, Jeff goes out and looks at something, and given the phone number and everything else for contact, and I don't.
And you have spoken with Jeff.
Mhm.
Okay. So
Yeah.
But he's never said, yeah, it's fine, they got that, everything's good on their end, they got approval for this, that. Never hear Right, so my concern is moving forward with whatever they're talking about now, what's my life gonna be like, what are my neighbor's life's gonna be like if they continue to do stuff outside of approval? Because they honestly still to this day, and you know
We
this.
definitely gave them our limit, so if they broke that limit, we have to fight it, you know?
But what they're doing now, I guess, I don't know.
Yeah, I
They're,
mean,
they're,
Well, they
for the
were
land
still doing
development plan, for what's on the plan, it's a survey of the property. I mean, there is a set, here's
yeah,
what you
yeah.
have and here's what you can do based off of that.
But
Whether
they're
they
able to
ex-
do that because of the things that they've already done in my.
Well, I mean, not necessarily with, their limits are really the coverages, like the building, the impervious area. And that's pretty much what's based off of that original plan that came in 2020. And we've looked at those two side by side to know, even when you talk about the storage containers, the answer is you can't claim those as existing. They aren't permitted, and that's part of what pushed you into the land development process. So you're asking for those to be considered as building or storage areas accessory to, and the answer is no, they're not documented with a permit. So call them your proposed condition, but you can't as your existing. So that the paved areas, we're going off what's on the plan. That's what we're looking for the conformance with the land development plan, but some of the other stuff that you're talking about may not necessarily be part of the land development, but I'll do what I can to try to see where we stand on the status of these things, get an answer before anything moves forward too
Yeah,
far.
yeah.
Just to,
Okay.
And
thank you.
these huge tractor trailers are coming and going during school hours and taking up like both sides of the road on the way out after they've loaded. Like today, I videotaped the tractor trailer. Yes, I'm that invested. I left my house with my rattling cans and drove to the other side on Crisscross Road to see these vehicles leave. They are hitting the neighbor's property, but that was the old owner's son's property. So they're up on the grass on his property, headed down the road, way over the line, over the bridge that I thought wasn't even allowed to have heavy equipment.
that comes down to enforcement action. I don't know
Yeah,
how much
so
we-
that was a whole lot of extra that you didn't need to know, but.
It doesn't hurt to hear it,
Maybe.
but it's- I don't know how much. we
Weren't they
know.
supposed to be doing a tractor trailer study too to see how the turning radius, or was that a different plan?
Yeah, they submitted something, the answer was this isn't what has been disclosed, we need more information.
Yeah,
So,
for down below, which is where.
just
the-
in general, whatever their
Leaving
largest
the-
truck is
Yeah.
entering the property
Yeah.
needs to be shown on the plan, so. Did you send any of those to Jen?
No, I didn't inundate her.
It wouldn't hurt to just, if you wouldn't mind, at least a picture of the truck.
Okay,
Just make sure we're consistent with whatever we see next, so. Anyway, she's here to discuss this and disclose it, so it's good to know in case it doesn't match what's being shown on the plan. So it is, honestly, that is one of the consistent comments that hasn't been completely addressed yet. I expect that to be one of the big
the
points at the
big,
next meeting.
yeah, I imagine so. Because like I said, they never loaded down at that low before, but they've got lots of extra vehicles parked up at the front that they didn't used to have there. Like, the landscaping company parks his stuff there now too. So I think maybe they had to load down lower, or these docks were just that much bigger.
But is there any length of truck length that they're allowed to
Well,
use?
I mean,
Whatever they can accommodate.
yeah, but it can be questioned. The police are here at the commissioner meeting, commissioner meeting, we can ask them.
Yeah, I think we ought to get some more information. I mean,
Yeah.
the stuff that you're sharing, I think will be helpful, and we can talk to Jeff about what the follow-up has been.
And I would honestly love to print out some MLS listings for them to go somewhere else, because it makes no sense that they want to be here. There's so many empty factories, empty warehouses, that would accommodate them so much better than Richmond Township.
Okay,
Thank you for listening.
thank you, Mr. Hartman. Scott, is there any other discussion on any other issues? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Sure.
I'll second.
Nick, okay, thank you. All in favor, say aye. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Thank you for coming out.
Maybe I
There's
should
no
get
one there,
Matt's
so you can't see it.
contact information instead of Jeff's.
Matt,
Oh, there is one.
Last name starts with an R.
in our office. Now I know you're doing that. Maybe, I don't, yeah. Again, I don't, yeah, until these
Just because you
situations happen.
spelled name.